Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. As you guys know, we've been dealing with COVID-19 and the pandemic and all the changes that are happening to the supply chain in general, and just the earth and the global humanity just in general, changes all around. So especially in the supply chain, we all know about the toilet paper shortages and all those different types of things. So today on the show, I am going to have Jeanette Barlow on to talk about IBM and IBM's role in the supply chain and how they are helping to kind of deal with the changes in supply chain and what has been changing and how those things work. So Jeanette is the Vice President of Strategy and Offering Management for IBM's Sterling product. So she's going to talk to us from the supply chain perspective and also kind of how things are shifting a little bit from a distribution side of things and how distribution is kind of changed a little bit and how companies have had to adapt to that and the supply chain has had to adapt overall and how it will continue to adapt into the future as well. So Jeanette, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. I hope you are also doing well and surviving the social distancing environment we're all in these days.
Yeah, trying to stay as safe as possible. Definitely interesting times and definitely changing. How's everything going for you?
We're well, and we feel very fortunate for that. So I will tell you that with two teenagers, our collective sanity is beginning to wear a little thin, but small problems in the scheme of the larger challenges we're all facing.
Definitely. It's good. It's good, even though it may be family driving a little crazy. At the same time, it's good to spend a little more time than normal, right? At least we say that.
Absolutely. As you know, these times at these ages, hanging out with your parents isn't exactly at the top of their list. So yeah. I do confess, I've selfishly been enjoying this a little bit.
All right, that's good stuff. So you're here to talk to us about supply chain and what's been happening with global supply chain. And I guess IBM's role in that and kind of what IBM Sterling is doing about that. So why don't you tell us first a little bit about IBM's role in the supply chain and kind of how, I guess, the Watson and the Sterling products work within the supply chain? Okay,
absolutely. So our solutions really help clients execute their supply chains around their order to cash, procure to pay, order management, and fulfillment processes. So you can imagine with these disruptions, every aspect of a supply chain in almost every company, whether you're small or global, is being impacted. Whether it be from your demand going away overnight or your demand skyrocketing. You know, we've seen quite bipolar outcomes depending on the kind of business you're in, to needing to have much more flexible ways in which you engage your clients and fulfill their orders. So it's been a challenge across every industry. And I will say I have the great honor to work with so many wonderful operational supply chain leaders with our clients. And one of the things that is now front of mind for them is their worker safety, right? This isn't
Definitely.
Like, how do I create the right distancing in our distribution centers? How do I ensure we have masks? How do we, there's a whole new set of challenges for them that they've never had to deal with before either.
Definitely, yeah, and I'm definitely seeing the changes as well on my side. I work as a distribution manager as well, so we've been trying to come up with all the different ways to properly social distance and make sure that everybody's safety is in place. And it's definitely way different. And I think that a lot of times you don't realize actually how close you are to people all the time. And it's kind of highlighting that. And it's making a different perspective on how to change those kinds of things. So what are some that you mentioned, kind of like the demand side and all these things, but there's many facets of supply chain and they're all being impacted largely right now, like we just talked about. So tell us, like, kind of specifically some of the impacts that you're seeing or that your customers are seeing on like the distribution and transportation side of things. Like how has the idea of kind of the warehouse shifted in a little bit? I know it's kind of shifted in where we're getting our supplies and our things that we need as consumers is a little different than normal. So talk to us a little bit about that shift.
You're absolutely right. So I believe the warehouse and the distribution centers are absolutely critical to keeping companies going, right? We are all turning to buying online. So the pressure on the efficient operations in a warehouse, and again, you're spiking your expectations out of these warehouses. At the same time, right, you're also, as you pointed out, needing to create more distance and staggering your staff and things that are kind of working against each other. So it's put much more pressure on there, and to be more creative and understand much more capably where your inventory is, what you've got across your various warehouses and distribution centers, and what you can expect in transit. So visibility down into your tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers to understand how you're going to really ensure that you don't have this mismatch and you don't disappoint clients. And we've seen, and as consumers even, we've seen really very different degrees of response. Some are able to manage this, and I think because they have made the investment in that visibility, they do have a handle on their logistics providers and what they can provide. They're able to collaborate more capably. They're able to take advantage of investments in the warehouse, order management, and fulfillment optimization solutions. Whereas others who have not maybe made those investments before and have relied more heavily on foot traffic in stores, right, are seeing that struggle on how they do fill orders at this point in time and keep that customer loyalty.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you have a good point there about, relying on that foot traffic. So I was curious how you see kind of the idea of the retail store now changing into being more utilized as like a distribution center. A lot of companies have kind of pivoted to curbside pickup and different aspects of trying to get their product to the customer, but utilizing this brick and mortar location that they have. How have you kind of seen that shift happen?
Well, that's an excellent point, because a couple of things there. First of all, how do you keep your retail locations relevant in this time? And frankly, I believe there's going to be kind of a permanent shift in behavior. We will all return to going back to the store, certainly. But, there are a set of consumers that had never been exposed to those conveniences, potentially. I know my parents were fascinated by, they're in their 80s, the fact that they could do that. Yeah. And they're like, we may always do this now. And I was like, oh, okay, which is great. But I do think there's going to not just be this temporary impact on putting pressure on the stores as part of your distribution footprint in that regard. It's going to have a permanent effect on that, and to really start to think about the store as sort of key distribution points for you and opportunities to do that, whether you're shipping from store or you're doing curbside pickup, or again, buying online and actually coming in and picking up in the store. So I do think there's going to be a permanent sort of impact on that and pressure on that. And we're seeing clients do a variety of amazing things. And in certain industries, it's really critical, because you don't want to say no to a sale because you might be running low in your warehouse, but at the same time, you've got inventory that's going to expire, whether it's fast fashion or seasonal items, et cetera. You want to be able to use that inventory. That is a tremendous position on your P&L. So, and you want to be able to keep the store employees engaged. So how do you convert stores to that? And a key piece of that are those getting, first of all, a global view of your inventory. You have to really understand when you get these orders, where do you have inventory? And so having inventory siloed by channel, I think, is no longer going to be an option. And the second thing is, how can you use these emerging technologies to help you more capably understand where's the best place to fulfill this, right? Balancing a variety of factors, the cost to fulfill versus seasonality versus avoiding markdown, capacity of your workforce, as the COVID rates spike in different geographic areas, et cetera. How do you do that and deal with local regulation? So I think that there are tools out there. Certainly we support clients with ours that can help organizations do that. But understanding that your online distribution is really no longer a separate channel from your store experience, it's fundamentally going to be critical for organizations.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Definitely. I totally agree. And it makes, when you put it the way you put it in terms of like, well, I'm out at the warehouse, but I have it in this store in Pennsylvania or something. Like, why are we not using that inventory, right? I think that's a great point, and that puts it really in perspective of, maybe you don't have foot traffic in Pennsylvania that's coming to buy whatever that item is, but you have people that want it in, I don't know, Arizona or something. So why are we not using that inventory that's in the store? So creating that visibility, I think, is key, like you said, to being able to pivot a little bit and utilize that. So what kind of advances do you think are needed in like the distribution space to try and create that visibility? And how does the IBM Sterling platform help you to create that visibility?
Sure. And, I wanted to add, too, also balancing the workforce load, right? I'm sure in like the distribution centers, they're maxed out, whereas you may have store associates that would like to work. So it also helps you manage, I think, your workforce a little bit capably as well. But to your question on sort of what's that journey and really looking at it strategically and making that decision that we're no longer looking at online different from in-store. And when you get to that point, there's a whole host of things that have nothing to do with technology you have to consider. As far as your supplier relationships, as far as looking at your inbound supply, things such as making sure you've reconciled incentives, right? So if it's the order is taken online, but it's fulfilled from the store, who gets credit, and where's the cost going? These are absolutely all achievable. We've worked with companies to help them achieve that. But there are a set of strategic and business operational decisions that need to be made. Once you do that, the key piece is looking at your inventory as a whole, right? And understanding the demand fluctuations that happen, right? You have a plan, but there are things that happen, and they are influenced by a host of things, from weather to COVID issues in this particular time, as well as events, et cetera. Then once you have that, you can really start to apply technologies for instance, when we have our order management solution, it is one of the market leading solutions out there. But we've done a great deal of work at the request of our clients to help them understand, how do I optimize fulfillment, right?
Okay.
So we've invested over the last couple of years on using AI and machine learning models to help really understand 14 to 21 day period across the SKUs in your company and all of your locations. How do you optimize fulfilling a customer's order? And certainly it was driven, several years ago when we started, it was driven by the shortage of trucks and drivers, right? And that cost hitting the P&L. How do I become more effective and not be shipping things from a central warehouse all the time, right? Because my customers are expecting this free delivery or 2-day delivery. But what we've become as we've worked with our clients, now they want to look at things like seasonality. They want to look at capacity of distribution centers and stores to be able to meet the SLAs that they've set on when it gets out. They also want to avoid markdowns, or the worst thing, they want to avoid stock out. So if I say I'm coming to buy it, it's really there, right? It's really there for me. So it's saying yes to the client, doing so in a way that takes into a variety of factors, and for every company, those will be different, and really using the technology in real time to make the optimal decision on how to fulfill that. And it's kind of an exciting opportunity that we have for them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, you said something there kind of touched on me, where you say, like, you want to make sure that, when you tell the customer something's there, it's actually there. And I'm, just thinking about the times where, you see the, is this available in your local store? And it says like, oh, there should be 2. And then you go to the store and they're like, oh, we can't find it. We don't know where it is. So it's definitely frustrating from a consumer standpoint. But I think also you're saying that, it's an exciting time. And I think that right now it is a really opportune time for, even though, it's this craziness of we're shut down and we can't do these things and these other things, but, it's an exciting time for businesses because it's a really big opportunity to kind of shift the consumer behavior to be able to utilize more of an omni-channel platform like you're talking about, and be able to be more creative in the way that we fulfill consumer demand and meet those service level agreements. So I think it's really interesting. And, I'm curious, from an AI standpoint, how do you think AI will kind of come into play in terms of allowing companies to make this pivot a little easier? And then how do you think it'll come into play in terms of if we ever run into something, I guess, like this pandemic? Hopefully we do not, but something of this magnitude. How will it kind of help companies in the future be able to predict that in a little bit better way and be a little more prepared than maybe we were kind of as a economy as a whole right now?
Well, that's a great point. We recently did a study and found that more than 90% of the Fortune 1000 companies, it was 94, have tier 2 suppliers in the regions of China that were most affected. And in the beginning, I had the opportunity to speak with a lot of operations, logistics, supply chain leaders, and they, it was a regional problem. And how do I get my goods? And then, as we clearly come to learn, there's no such thing as a regionalized problem, right? It has, when it comes to things like a pandemic or health issues. So we've learned a lot. I think what's key to this and why AI is so promising is that it really comes down to data, right? To be able to make decisions quickly and confidently, and perhaps even anticipate a decision that needs to be made to the point you were bringing on the predictive nature.
Right.
It really means you need to harness these technologies to scale the amount of data that you can access and correlate, not just the data in your organization, which is challenging enough for companies across their warehouse and their transportation and their procure to pay, that's always challenging enough. But now you want to be able to have more sharing with your suppliers, and then you look at external events that impact, right? What are the government actions? If we think about India shut their borders and issued stay-at-home sort of within 4 hours, right? Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Massively disruptive to clients that had supply chains based there. So if you can and that's what AI does really fundamentally. It augments what humans can do at a scale that is just not possible. Now, AI seems big and daunting, but when you look at very creative ways it can be embedded in solutions, it becomes to be very impactful. We just talked about the fulfillment optimization built into our solutions. Another one we have helps with your supplier collaboration and understanding anomalies in your order to cash or procure to pay systems and cycle time predictions. And you can anticipate that you're going to have delayed shipments and these kinds of things that alert you so you can start to manage the exceptions before the exceptions are managing you. And I think that's really critical. We're creating control towers that sort of record what's going on, understand the resolutions that are happening, and start to create playbooks so they can recommend the next best action. So the next time a disruption that looks similar to what got resolved successfully in the past, there's a playbook to recommend what you do next. So there are ways that technology has become incredibly consumable without being overwhelming to organizations.
Definitely. And so you mentioned in there actually the control tower. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that actually is? Because that's actually like kind of harnessing a lot of different environmental factors as well, right?
It is. A lot of investment and optimization has gone on in supply chain. But we found typically it's been in the swim lanes of a function in the warehouse, right? Or in planning and it's that end-to-end visibility of what is happening in the execution phase that is really critical. So control towers really are striving to give you that end-to-end visibility. How are you executing against plan? Where are your exceptions or your anomalies? So you can really start to get a better handle on what you should be paying attention to. And not all anomalies or disruptions are equal. Some have more impact, right? Or are harder to resolve. So really helping you understand the up and downstream impact of that can be very, very critical. It also can help pinpoint the root cause across processes so that an action in one doesn't create a bullwhip effect somewhere else, right? And that's really the role of control towers in general. In Sterling, we work with clients to create control towers because every company and supply chain are a bit unique, but they're based on our supply chain insights platform that fundamentally uses AI. So in addition to giving you a dashboard of visibility with KPIs, it has AI to help understand and give you insights as to what might be happening, what might be the next best action you want to take. And it's learning all the time. So over time and use, you start to elevate the collective capability of your entire team from the learnings as it is in action. So it's kind of an exciting time as we look to ensure the capability of supply chain professionals, new individuals that are coming on, new locations, can really take advantage of the skills of those that have been doing this for a while.
Right. And I think you had a great point there about, kind of managing the exceptions instead of, letting the exceptions manage you. And I think that's really what, when companies look at technology, I think that's what they need to look for is like, how does the technology help them better to spend less time trying to figure out what the exceptions are and actually just dealing with what the exceptions are, the exceptions that are coming up. How can we prevent them or deal with them or kind of navigate around them, right? So I think that AI and the fact that it's becoming more, I guess, digestible from a regular person's standpoint, and more accessible too, I think is a great thing, and will just help businesses overall and just the supply chain overall be more nimble in a sense, I guess, and be able to react better to these types of things. So with it being more accessible and more digestible in that sense, do you see the demand for your AI kind of products increasing due to the pandemic now, for people wanting to be more prepared and be able to react in a better way in the future and even just currently?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, certainly, first and foremost, we're working with clients to make sure they can get through this moment, right? That business continuity that they need. We have helped many clients almost within just weeks scale their, the shift in their online business by 150 to 300%. So that's certainly foremost in everyone's mind right now. And in fact, IBM has been working across the company on some offers, free resources companies can leverage to get to the other side, off of our supply chain COVID-19 page, which we can provide you and the link to. So we do really want to help, but we are seeing an absolute influx of companies saying, listen, never again. We don't want to be here again. What we needed much better intelligence around the multiple tiers of our supply chain, our inbound supply. We needed to be able to understand different community, government, regulations, how they're impacting our workforce, what that might mean for our capacity to fulfill orders. We needed to be able to have teams come together more quickly and do this. And we certainly needed to be able to offer more flexibility in how we fulfill orders. So that I anticipate as we emerge from this and the economy regains its footing, there is going to be a considerable moment for companies to have that, to search inwardly and go, all right, have we been looking at our supply chain as a strategic, not just a strategic competitive advantage, but fundamentally critical to our ability to remain viable in challenging times? Where do we have our blind spots? How do we address those? And who are the technology partners that can invest with us to help us get there?
Definitely, yeah. I think, just kind of going off my point from earlier, I mean, with what you just said, I mean, now, even though the time is for some companies, it's a little scary, I guess, and they're kind of like, oh, we need to be very conservative. I think now is the time to really look at those opportunities to improve overall and start to look at the technologies that can help you improve your processes and help you just improve your supply chain and optimize better overall, like you just mentioned. So it's really interesting to see how companies and the supply chain overall are reacting to this. And I think taking this time to really strengthen yourself through a technology standpoint and utilize things like AI to help you kind of come out of this more prepared for whatever the next thing is. We don't want there to be a next thing, but I think it's inevitable that at some point there's going to be something else. Maybe not as big a disruption as this. I mean, because this is huge, pretty unprecedented, I would say. But making sure that we're able to kind of get through those things and being able to be more flexible, like you said, and pivot a little more, and be ready to kind of just keep things going, maybe not totally normally, but in a better sense and have a better hold on things. So I think it's really great what you guys are doing, and I want to thank you for coming on the show to talk to us about this really, really interesting topic. And I think it's a good thing to put out there and be able to talk about this in a time of, I guess, panic a little bit and disruption, but be able to talk about, there is opportunity to come out of this stronger and come out of it with a better, stronger supply chain that's a little more nimble and a little more resilient too, I think. So Jeanette, I want to thank you for coming on the show. How can people find out more information about IBM Sterling?
So you can just simply go to IBM.com, type in Sterling, or you can also come to the IBM.com /supply chain, I think is the URL. As soon as I say that, my marketing department will be like, we should have emblazoned that on her forehead.
I think they're calling in right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So if you do IBM.com /supply chain, that can send you off to kind of our solutions, as well as I mentioned earlier, we have put out some free resources for organizations to look at to help them during this time. And they can certainly explore that as well.
Okay, great. We'll definitely post all those links as well at thenewwarehouse.com, so you guys can go there and check that out. So Jeanette, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I hope you stay well and stay safe through all this COVID-19 pandemic stuff.
Thank you for having me, and the same to you.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.